Making it back to the farm was difficult, to say the least. The sleep was really starting to roll in, and it's not as though something you can completely stop. You can slow it down, but you're not stopping it. Eventually, I ended up basically crashing right next to the porch, and everyone ran to help me inside. I was able to stay awake long enough to tell them about the new neighbors. They were absolutely shocked that over just on the other side of the ridgeline, there was a whole bunch of spiders, what they called arachnae. I was like, wait a minute, aren't they arachnids? They all looked at me and confirmed that this is what it was called when they were not exactly fully insect anymore, but more human than arachnid. I told them that the spiders primarily chew on bugs. They wouldn't be much of a problem. They're not going to be going after the same prey as us. In fact, since they have as much food as they do, they wouldn't really be going after anybody anytime soon. Everyone was beyond grossed out at the idea of chewing on the bugs, but hey, to each their own, right? With that, they were also grossed out the fact that I told them about the gang that we had taken down. I really hate gang members. I really, really do. I still don't feel bad. In fact, I enjoyed doing what I did. Although there was the problem with the side effect of tattoos. I left a very nasty trail from where I had landed straight into the house. Thankfully, they took care of it. I was apologizing the entire way as they carried me all the way up to the bed. With my large form, that's not easy. Well, if I had a hat, it would be hats off to them. Unfortunately for the girls, the sleep took me before they could have any type of fun time that they wanted. It seemed as though the girls were getting a little more active in that area lately. But hey, when the sleep comes, and you don't have a choice. I woke up feeling so much lighter. Wow, I couldn't believe it. Moving around, wow, I can't believe it. Usually my joints are popping and my muscles ache and everything. Man, I feel great. As I began to get up, I realized that I woke the girls. It was just around dawn, and usually this is when they actually start getting out of bed. They were very excited to see me awake. They reached up, hugged, and examined me to make sure I was okay. I wanted to know why, and when I asked, they said, "You look different." I ran off to the mirror, and I could see they were right. That whole kind of, shall we say, feminine way I was moving was gone. I was back to being fairly brawny, which I was actually grateful for. This is probably the reason why I felt lighter. My muscle density was back. I still had my wings and clearly my tail. However, the body is much, much more human. This is surprising. I don't know if it's from the tattoo ink or from the fact that I just chowed down a couple of human males. Yeah, I was pretty well fed when I actually landed, even though I left a stink trail behind me. And after I examined myself, one of my dolls actually came and started rubbing on my muscles, saying that my skin was much smoother, closer to actual skin now. Then I turned and looked and realized they weren't wearing much. My ladies never do when they actually sleep, but sometimes my feline compatriots don't wear any clothes, and since they had changed to be more human, this made things a bit exciting. In fact, I felt the hormone rush go through my system. I haven't felt this since the time I actually changed. Usually it was more mechanical than anything else, but suddenly this was too much over the top. What the hell is wrong with me? You know what, ladies? Sorry for waking you up, but you're not going to sleep. I came down for lunch a few hours later. The women inside the kitchen were giggling as I came down. I know that giggle, and every guy does. Women think they're funny. They think they're being sneaky about it, but believe me, we know. When they asked where the girls were, I told them they were sleeping it off, and of course, the ladies gave each other that look. Yes, again, you're not hiding anything. But then I had to ask the one question that was gnawing at me. How many days was I out? How long was I unconscious this time? They told me 8 days. Yeesh, no wonder I finished off 2 canteens while I was up there. I need to go redo my armor now, though. It doesn't fit. again. This is getting annoying how I have to redo it every single time I fall asleep. Well, just about. Sometimes sleep is just normal sleep, but oh, jeez, this is annoying. I immediately grab something to eat, actually a lot to eat, and get to work. I've been out for a while and I need to pull my weight around here, of course. 4 days later, I arrive at the town meeting. Pretty much everybody did. It was a long walk for most, but at least some of the kids got to ride the friendly skies, i.e., I carried them the whole way. Unfortunately for our group, I'm the only one who can take to the skies. However, with my wings not getting any smaller, but my body getting more condensed, it was a whole lot easier to carry one kid in each arm and one on my back, provided they did not hold on to my wings, which I had to constantly snap up at them. Although this was something that they originally were joking at, until I turned my head. Thankfully, I can still turn it almost all the way around, and thanks to those nearest changes, I can actually give them a look of don't do that. Yes, I can finally emote, but just a little bit. Just enough so people can see, as long as they're paying attention. Flying, of course, was easier to get there than walking, and we were there for a long time before everybody caught up. So I figured we would be spending a few hours, as we talked about my new look. Unfortunately, I still didn't have a lot of clothes that fit. These legs are still not human legs, and of course, try to put on a pair of pants when you got a tail, or wear a t-shirt when you got a pair of wings coming out the middle of your back. It's just one of those things. However, not long after I arrived, I was the one who got a surprise. My other flyers, they showed up, and they changed as well. Much more feminine than reptilian. So much so that I was actually starting to get urges again. What the hell is wrong with my system now? What the hell was in those guys' system? Was it crack, meth, or I don't know. Maybe they were on ecstasy. Maybe that's the reason they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Seriously, one tried to fire at me, and I swear this guy couldn't hit the ground if he tripped. Or maybe he was tripping. Aside from that, I had to tell my new flying companions that they might want to start wearing clothes. When they asked me why, I said, well, you're all just hanging out right now. Which all of them seemed to enjoy the fact that all the men noticed. They noticed the many curves they now had, and they watched as the men shifted uncomfortably. However, they weren't so happy when some of the women came up and just threw blankets over them and said to cover up so the kids don't see. I had to remind them that, believe me, the kids had already got a good look-see. As I looked down, and the three that had gone with me were still staring up at my reptilian friends. The ladies, being smart, immediately started to bring the kids away, trying to tell them, you shouldn't stare, it's not polite. With that, the flyers simply looked and grinned. Then I realized they can emote as well. I didn't think we would get this many changes. I mean, granted, I ate two full-size male myself, but I mean, they only had what, one female apiece? Makes me wonder what else we're going to see. The new neighbors showed up. Our wonderful elves came, and they brought the three kids with them. They remained armed the entire time. They were very nervous, seeing as though their group was actually the smallest out of all of them. I can understand their plight. However, one thing that was completely surprising was the fact that most of the humans almost couldn't tell that they were elves until they turned and moved their ears just a little bit. Well, that is, unless they got excited. Just like when I get shocked and my tail sticks straight out, as in doubt towards the ground, following the path of my spine. Or one of my feline companions. As she gets scared, her tail shoots straight up. When they get nervous, their ears poke straight out 45 degrees up. This is just seemingly a normal thing for us. Something that everyone else will have to get aware of and get used to. But you know what? At that point, it wasn't really a problem. I mean, we're all freaks here. Why not? Even those of us that haven't changed, we're still dealing with everyone else. It was of zero surprise to me or anyone else that the male Lamia immediately gravitated towards our adult female. She was more than happy to see another one of her kind. She figured she was the only one that survived the change. However, I could see that she was getting more and more interested in him. Her coils continually moved closer and closer. I had to remind her that he is still barely a teenager. Then she simply looked at me and said, "That can be fun too." I shot her a look of knock it off and flexed my claws just a little bit, just to let her know that she needs to knock it off a little. We might not have the police here, but that also means that if someone's pissed off, you might just catch a bullet. Bad idea. When the Arachne finally arrived, they were the last ones. They showed up with almost everybody, which is part what I asked, which I'm grateful they did. The surprising part was just like everybody else who had dined on human, they looked more human, and this was something that surprised me a lot. There were changes all around, not just for the women, but of the males as well. However, there was something very obvious. Unlike everyone else, in their culture, in their own DNA, the males are much smaller than the females. We looked over, and the one that I originally thought was only about 10 years old was actually a full grown adult male. I only realized this because now that he's much more human, he looks like a halfling with spider legs that kind of, well, he doesn't have the bulbous back end of a spider, but his legs still move that same way. It's not very pleasant to look at. However, some of the women started to look and wonder, I wonder, will those grip on and hold me tight? With some of the comments that was going across, I was starting if the men were in rut and the women were in heat, the way everybody would be talking in their little groups. Then, of course, I heard a little bit of the what if my son marries your daughter? What if my daughter likes your son type of conversation. And I realized this was a good thing. This was a very good thing. As we started the meeting, we left that up to the elders. I'm not one of them, to lead the meeting. And first, we started with introductions to make sure everybody knew who was from what village, which farm, which compound, whatever it might be. And of course, some were more obvious than others. However, this helped to lower the last bit of tensions. Even though the elves would not unsling their rifles, they did have them strapped across their back when they stood up and introduced themselves. We went over the different borders of whoever controlled what. Obviously, the farm I was in would control the land that we had, along with a little bit around it. That way, it allowed us not only to farm, but to hunt. Along with this, we had the area next to the river, which actually cut out a very strange strip of land. However, their hunting grounds would actually be stretching beyond. The kicker is, we found out with the amount of cattle we had, as long as we were able to reproduce them at a regular rate every year, we wouldn't have to hunt nearly as much. Everyone was glad about this because, hey, beef is good. Venison is great, but beef is just, there's something about it that just makes everybody salivate. With that, we began to talk about trade. And since certain things were going to be needed by certain areas, the trade was going to be pretty easy. The majority of everything would be in the realm of food. However, this would not only be the case. We would also be trading in manufacturing, repair, things of that nature. And of course, transportation. The fact that those flyers had that large strip of land, it was not really conducive to anything except really fishing. And let's face it, you can have your fill of fish. However, it wouldn't be difficult for all of them to take to the air and basically deliver mail to all the different areas. Along with that, we moved on to the last area, security. Those of us that can take to the skies would be the ones that would be on the forefront of security for the town. Our farm was basically pushed up against the woods. However, we realized that if we held security on our side, those that we faced, whether it be the actual cabin, the compound, or the other farm area, that would be protected and we wouldn't have to patrol as wide of an area. This was the beginnings. This was the beginnings of our town. This would be the beginning of peace for once. Finally, we had some sort of security, some sort of structure that everyone agreed to. We agreed to things like if anyone found insects, whether it be the ants, the roaches, the termites, the mantis, whatever it might be, if they killed any, they would be immediately dropped off to the spiders. If anybody found fuel, fuel would be divided between the two main farms. If anybody was able to find any type of manufacturing, we need to make sure the compound was getting that because they were going to be setting up towers. Towers that just above where their cabin is, they could see for dozens of miles. This would be extremely important for our security. And of course, the list of things went on and on and on. Eventually, everybody was getting bored and cracking, well, dad jokes the whole time. It eventually got to the point where everyone was starting to get tired, not from eating too much, but just because it was getting late in the day. Eventually, we had a very large meal, and we bid adieu to everyone. As the kids slept in my arms, I was actually relieved not to have one on my back. That way, I could actually get us back to the farm without too much trouble. However, once I landed, I realized I should have had somebody else with me anyway. That way, I wouldn't have to sit and watch the kids, and I would be able to go and shuttle them back and forth, but I'm not leaving them alone. As I brought the kids in and let them go to sleep, I took to the skies again, making small circles around the farm, watching, making sure that nothing happens to them. This is home. This is the family. And until something else happens, this is my life. Well, it's a good life. And the devil help anyone who threatens it.